guys, so welcome back to the Munky Cave. In the last episode we were finishing up the front of the car. We're pretty much done with that for now anyways, and we're going to move on to the back. So on the back of this car we're ditching the leaf springs and we're going with the total cost involved torque arm setup, right? It's a pretty race setup. They send you nearly everything in the kit. I asked them to omit a few things because I want to build my own links and whatnot. Otherwise, this kit comes fairly complete. So I've got a heavy-duty 4.9-inch right here. They send you fixturing plates to bolt some of their brackets and tabs in place that hold the rest of the torque arm assembly together. Over on the weld table over there, I've got the actual center torque arm set up. I'm getting ready to weld that up. So come on, you guys, let's keep going on this car. It's gonna be bad. Alright you guys, so what you'll see back here, I've got my heavy duty 4.9-inch in place, my lower link bars right here, 7/8 rod ends. I'm from the off-road industry. I like a little bit of beefcake. I think some of you guys are running 3/4-inch rod ends. You're crazy, but okay. I guess it's a lighter duty application than what I'm used to, so we tend to overkill it in the off-road industry. But coilovers are all mounted back here, panhard bracket right here, ready to go. It's all in place. Now I will be honest with you, I assembled my frame mounted panhard bracket backwards over there, so my panhard kind of kicks back a little bit. As long as it clears the fuel tank, I'm okay with that, but it's not quite as tight to the rear end as everybody normally likes it, and it's totally my fault. If it works, it works. If not, I did not weld that one in all the way yet, because if I need to cut it out and redo it, that's what I'll have to do. But I'm hoping I can kind of get away with it, because you know, it's sitting there welding. It's time. It took a couple hours to build, so just saying. Alright you guys, so I know I wasn't able to film some things because my cameras were overheating and I was running into some issues like that. But here we are, we're back on the back of this car. So I've got the rear end in place, right? And remember I had spoke about building my own leaf spring pockets and moving them forward 2 inches to add some length to the links here. Well, that's what's going on here. This is all mounted. The TCI brackets are on the rear end right here, so it's pretty much hung. The next thing is the TCI torque arm right here, which this is their trick stuff. So they usually send you a bracket that covers this in the front mount, but since I've got a bunch of custom framework and stuff going on up here, I let them know that I kind of wanted to do it on my own. So that's what we're on to next. We're going to build out the torque arm mount for this thing and hopefully have enough room to put a transmission and a drive shaft in here. It's all very close, and I'm taking a bit of a gamble because I don't have the drivetrain in this car yet. So I'm going to try and find a happy medium in there. I got most of the rear end mounted back there. You've seen a bunch of fabrication from me. And now we're on to the front portion, so I was saving this kind of for last, right? Now I'm taking a little bit of a gamble because I don't have the motor and drivetrain in this car. So clearance right here for me is a little wishy-washy. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to weld all this 100% in just yet, in case I've got to knock a tube out or adjust the tube right here, something like that. Okay, This is the cool total cost involved plunger system right here. It just helps gain traction when you're launching and under power, things like that. So what I've designed here is just like a lower bracket that engages this torque arm. And what I want to share with you guys is something that we in the off-road industry and general fabrication, metal fabrication, as far as car, automobile builders, truck builders, whatever, is a concept that we work under is called load pathing, right? And it's basically just trying to understand like energy distribution. Okay, when you put your 500 to 600 horsepower through that rear end right there, you're putting a pretty heavy torque on this torque arm right here. So you want to build your mount stout enough to be able to handle that without basically failing, bending, tweaking, or any of that. And so I've got an applied leverage right here with my bracket that reaches out and grabs the torque arm, right? So I know that under power, that torque is like a vertical pressure right here. Okay, so you want to reinforce your mount so that torsional load on whatever you have built here is basically has a secondary plane to it. Okay, because that's the load. So this goes up, which means this tube right here would twist. Okay, but in turn I've added these tubes that are at a different angle. So I don't know if you can see it from this view, but this is straight, and then these point up. Okay, and all they're supposed to do is basically a triangulated account for the load right here. So load pathing is just one of like two energy distributions that you're trying to think of. Okay, same thing when building a roll cage. You're trying to understand, like, if you're in an accident and you hit in a certain area, how are you going to distribute that load through that chassis or whatever to save the occupants, obviously. But if you build it strong enough and design it or engineer it well enough, it can withstand multiple crashes or accidents, things like that. Okay, so when you're building this, if you're doing this on your car, think about the loads that you're putting in, not just making it stick and then that's okay. You want to do more than that. You want it under load to be able to withstand the pressures and the energies that you're putting through it. So make sure you build everything stout. Make sure the areas that you want to weld and fabricate to are accessible. Don't weld yourself into a corner and things like that where you can't reach another component, because guess what? That leaks. So what I've done is I put a weep hole in this tube right here. I'm going to go ahead and put another weep hole in this tube over here. I forgot before I tacked it in, but I can just come in right here with a drill. Okay, because it's amazing how many vehicles, like, I've cut something off to change it, the owner wanted to change it just for whatever reasons, and you go to cut one of these tubes out and they're completely filled with water. That happens all the time. Now, of course, it drains out and rusts all over you, makes a mess, but water is like our worst enemy when it comes to raw steel, so you don't want that on the inside, just like you don't want it on the outside. So if you're going to seal up a tube, like this tube right here is captured, okay, which means this tube is sealed right here, all right, do yourself a favor and drill some weep holes prior to welding if you can help it, or think about it, because when you weld, you're expanding the gas inside and things like that. It'll blow out your weld in one spot and usually ruin the aesthetic as well. So it's a good idea to have weeping holes on the bottom where it'll drain out, things like that. So that's something to keep in mind. But here we are. We're getting close to the fabrication aspect being fairly complete on this car, and it's pretty exciting. We're kind of buttoning up the torque arm installation on this car. So there's a couple of little things I just wanted to discuss to share with you guys that are kind of important to me, right? And one of those is obviously, like I talked about, load pathing, energy distribution. But the other ideas is so simple as locking nuts. Okay, because I see it too often, and I see people using regular non-locking nuts, and then they'll use like a lock washer. Okay, and that has no business in the automotive applications. Unless you're trying to hold the carpet or something down, that doesn't matter. But if it's a suspension component or something that takes some kind of structural load, you want to use a minimum of a grade 8 bolt. Grade 5s have no business on cars. Spend the extra 5 cents, okay, per bolt. Really, it's shameful when you don't. But grade 8 hardware at a minimum, otherwise grade 10 in your suspension pivot points is okay as well. And then locking nuts. This is a Stover nut. So if you can see there, the end is crushed. It's like an oval, not round. And that is so that when you drive this on, it locks in place. The alternative to this, which is called a Stover nut, is called a nylock, or a nylon locking nut, and those are okay. You know, if you're near exhaust or somewhere where there's a lot of heat, a stover nut is ideal because there's nothing to melt out like the nylon melting out or something like that. But general purpose, grade 8 bolts, locking nuts. Man, that's important, right? And guess what? The devil lives in the details. So paying attention to a few things, you take this stuff apart and put it together so many times when you're building it, or you should be anyways. Don't just put something together if it doesn't fit welded up. That's not how it works, right? You're supposed to take it apart, adjust it. I do that on these cars all the time. I did that with this part right here. I had to cut this loose and readjust it because I made a mistake in the original location. Of course, I'm not going to show you guys all the curse words and stuff that goes with that. But paying attention to the direction your hardware is pointing to. All my bolts in this section are pointed in the same direction, all the way up to the top of the rear end. And the reason for that is just a simple aesthetic. When somebody looks underneath this car, if they want to take a gander, you know, get down, lay on their chest, or whatever they're going to have to do to see under this thing sitting so low, but it will not catch your attention if all the bolts are headed in the right direction, in the same direction. But if one of them is turned around backwards, it'll catch your attention, and then you want to look to see what else is wrong. So keep that in mind. The devil lives in the details. All right, I'll catch you guys in the next episode. We'll see what that one's all about. I don't know yet.